Thanks for that introduction to the Seas program. Alliance for Change on the Move. And happy to be here. I want to say that I was away in the United States, and to the surprise of a lot of the PPP cronies who thought that my visa was revoked and all manner of nonsense. I was here trying to get them for them to see. They didn't turn up. None of them. But we are here again, the Alliance for Change, and we want to bring to you a number of the issues that are, making life difficult for Barbicians. And we have here former EPA head Vince Adams, Dr. Vince Adams, and our General Secretary David Patterson. And we want to start off with, amongst other things, a number of the issues I think very important. And that has to do with the recent statement from Mr. Zulfikar that Gaisuco will need another $1.6 billion out of the Treasury to keep itself in sustenance mode or in survival mode. Barbicians, and let me start the subject here because I am shadow agriculture in Parliament, and I have already made mention on so many occasions that sugar is dead, literally dead when it comes to profitability if you are now going to open up all the estates and factories as the PPP wanted. And it will require huge sets of monies, and it will become like a black hole, taking up taxpayers' money to the tune of what caused us to bring it to right size, which is $36 billion, $1 billion a month in our coalition government. Right now, the PPP is in almost a year and some months in government. They spent $9 billion behind Gaisuco last year, passed a budget for $1.5 billion for its survival this year, starting of the year, and then now asking for $1.6 billion. So that is almost $12.1 billion in the space of a year and some months. That is almost like $1 billion. Now you got to add that to what we heard, what Jagdeo has now promised severed sugar workers, and we will come to that. But we want to talk something about this, 1.6 first. We have been stating, a long time ago, that the sugar industry is not going to die only because of its lack of profitability, but it is also the lack of a generation of workers that will not come from the young people of today. Nobody wants to go and cut cane, as we have been saying, and they are not mechanization or even the methods for mechanization in the sugar industry, which will cost plenty. And because of the nature of our soils and the weather patterns in Guyana, you can't really depend on mechanization. So it is best that we go do other things like I noticed Zulfikar is doing to Barbicians, which we had as the plan. Take the land, go into aquaculture, go into other peas, pineapple farming, plantain, and pineapples and peppers and things like that. And prawns, the other P. That is what we got to do, because those are the things that are going to make life difficult, because make life easier. In a difficult sugar industry, you still have a lot of labor there, but don't expend the monies into something that is certainly going to be unprofitable and certainly will not get a labor force to want to go and do that kind of labor. I don't know if my other two colleagues here want to say a few words on this additional spending that Zulfi is going to come to Parliament as soon as Parliament is convened after the recess. When is that supposed to be?
Good night, Conrad. Good night, Barbies. Region 5, my good fellow colleagues. I really don't want to talk about the spending. What I want to talk about is what somebody brought to our attention. I think yourself and all of us is the conditions of the factories in which they're asking the Barbicians and the sugar workers to work in. I mean, they're dangerous, particularly Rose Hall. I mean, we've heard thought that the place is derelict. It's unsafe. You know, what I mean, the Ministry of Labor hasn't gone and did a occupational health and safety inspection. But because of their zeal, because of them, Berbice being gifted a young man, that fella named Sis Narine, they're trying all the things to go and reopen it, right? But the state of the factory, the boilers, the equipment, and everything like that is dangerous. And they're pushing ahead with it. They're pushing ahead with it because, of course, they're saying it's a campaign promise.
Yeah.
Any other person, any other region would have known how this is made. Even if you're going to do it, even if you're going to be spending billions of dollars, safeguard our workers. Our workers, our human resources, are our most important asset. About 3 weeks ago, a worker, an employee of Rosal came to us, came right down here to the Alliance for Change to complain of the conditions under which they're working. And I know plenty of the persons that are listening know exactly what I'm talking about, but they're scared to say it. He says, I mean, the worker that came asked us to come and make a sneak visit and those things. But a lot of Barbicians know, right? In their haste to open something that is not reopenable, what they're doing is forcing our good, hardworking, honest, decent Guyanese to work in environments that are unsafe. So I'm saying it now. When an accident is going to happen, because you know it's going to happen. You know that they're going to try, they're going to push the envelope, and we're saying it now that we hold the government responsible. We will hold the government responsible for any accident that happens. If you put our Guyanese in unsafe environments.
And it is illegal under the Occupational and Health and Safety Act. As we know, factory circumstances must be safe and sound. And this is not the case. Additionally, you know, the people inside of the estate areas too have been making the several complaints. And that is also about Skeldon, that it is in no position to even start. And I continue to get information that they're taking away parts from Skeldon, at least punts and other implements from Skeldon, and sending it to Rosal, sending it to Albion, and all kinds of things. Now that is, there is a word for that when you're taking off the flesh from one factory and sending it to the other. And that is totally outrageous, because they now going to still want to tell the Barbicians that they're going to open the Skeldon factory. Skeldon literally must be, the Skeldoners must be told that they can't open that unless they spend another $100 million US. The thing was a dead elephant from the time Jagdeo gave that contract to the wrong set of people. Rather than the Brazilians and the Indians, he gave it to, I think, Cynic, CNIC, something like that. That was cynical, quite frankly. But this is how it is. And Barbicians must understand that what you bargained for, you're not getting. Before we bring in, I don't know if you would want to make a comment on that too, Vince.
No, you guys are the experts. You guys.
Yeah. The other thing that I want to mention is a very wrong and discriminatory. I understand our former Minister of Finance said it is criminal, Winston Jordan, and that is Bharat Jagdeo going up to Barbies and seeing that his Barbician support base and constituency has huge resentment and disaffection as to how the PPP is governing this country, telling them now that he is going to give them $250,000 additional severance payment. Now, you cannot go into this treasury and take out money under those kinds of circumstances. You cannot double dip in relation to severance. under the Termination of Employment Act, Termination and Severance Payment Act, you have a scenario where we in Parliament made a law that after you're terminated, like we did in relation to the 5,000 sugar workers in our right-sized program, all of them got their severance payments. Severance is calculated by your years that you work there, the salary you used to work, and a portion of that, if you had long period of time, you will have a 2 weeks multiplied by the years that you were there and so on, or every 5 years. There's a computation method. And each one of the sugar workers, by the way, GAU was kicking up a stink that they want, although we didn't have the money at that time, you know, they wanted the money right away. And if you see the nasty attitude they took, what Winston Jordan did was to give them half of the severance payment at the beginning of that year, and then half at the latter part of the year. And all of them got their severance payment in accordance with law. And that is what Law Governed State, the coalition, was doing. Now, Bharat Jagdeo feels, and this thing is coming straight out of what is known as the Dictator's Handbook. You know that? Dictator's Handbook. He now see that they need something, they got a problem, and he go like a god. Baba now come, Fabi look after Abi, and he go give Abi $250,000. Where you think he can take this $250,000 out of? Is the treasury and a vice president, unless the vice means wickedness there, cannot take the money out like that. That is mischief, that is criminal, that is vice. So like the vice president now behaving rather vicious and vice. So it is very important to understand, sugar workers, we are in agreement that there must be some benefits, but don't come and lie to us and say we are going to give you an additional severance package. It is not a severance package. Bharat knows his politics, and he knows that them Barbicians there in the sugar estates are now very vexed and disaffected with him. They are disenchanted. They don't like how he's governing, and he's the president again. Don't matter with Irfaan Ali. He can't say nothing. And this fella now come in and say, I can give you all 250,000 who can knock off. And it is going to be, you know, let me see if I could pronounce this like Irfaan Ali. Reparative justice. That is what he wants to say it is. Reparative justice. Because we knocked them off. We did not knock them off like that. A man is not owner of an employment like a transport. Plenty people get knocked off already. They knock off people inside of Diamond Factory and Diamond Estate when they closed it down. The PPP closed down another estate. The PPP closed down plenty things. And they paid the people their severance, and the people were satisfied. They gone and find other jobs and so on. But this one now wants to play God. And Barbicians, you must read this man through, because that is what then makes you fellas feel that I got surha with this guy. Surha with him. You got to go and bow down at him because he is like, you know, and he wants to play the next Chetty Jagan. But he's not Chetty Jagan. This fella is totally different. And so I am saying that this is discriminatory. If you're going to give sugar workers who have been severed and terminated, you also have to give a couple thousands of public servants who have also been severed and terminated under the PPP. Why not give them? Is it because they're black? Is it because they're nurses? Is it public servants? What kind of racial government we got? And you know, when we talk about this thing, a lot of people feel that, you know, we behaving racial. It is not racial that we behaving. It is unequal treatment. It is discriminatory treatment. And a person can't go into the the till, as it were, take out some money and give his set of supporters who now you want to quiet down because it looked like they're getting too hot, disaffected, and showing their resentment publicly. Barbicians, you got to show your resentment publicly because you have been fooled. All of them, remember when I've been raised a salary for minister and so on from 390 something thousand to 6-7, and some of them we got $800,000. Them said them go bring them down. Them bring down anything? They not bring down nothing. Them satisfied with that now. Them have said that is the right salary. So I want you Barbicians to understand they are fake. And that is an important piece of thing I want to talk to you about, because that too, just like how they want I walk Rosal Estate against the law of Occupational and Safety Act and so on, they want to bring something here that will violate another law, Prevention of Discrimination Act. We passed a law in Parliament. I was a PPP member then, and we passed a law because we wanted to stop this prevention of discrimination, or to create what is called people being accessible to courts, to go there and fight their case if they feel that they can get justice for discrimination. And we stated a lot of things, what we can do. This is obviously a case of discrimination, and it is going to be something that I'm going to take a deeper look in now that I am back from my short holiday to check whether it violates this prevention of discrimination. But those people who are aware of the act are saying so. But a lawyerly brief will have to be put out. And I believe that it is so discriminatory. I don't know if you'd want to say anything on that, David.
But just a couple of points before I leading in. I'm doing an intro for Vince because I know he's on next. About a couple of days, the Consumer Price Index, the half-yearly report, was published. And the half-yearly report, ladies and gentlemen, is a assessment, a summary of how our economy is doing and how prices have raised and or so forth. And it's interesting to note, and I'm leading on to you, Vince, that in the half-year report, food, everybody knows that food items has gone up 16.9% increased. I think it's more, but that's the numbers that they're giving to us, you know what I mean? And everybody knows in Berbice areas that agriculture, which is the bedrock of our country, the future of our country, not oil, agriculture, in our opinion, is doing very, very badly in Region 6. But food prices, according to the Bank of Guyana, Consumer Price Index has gone up 17%. So therefore, obviously, what you could have bought for $100, now you have to pay $117 for. Every single thing has gone up, save and except oil. New industry and the introduction. So the oil barons, the oil companies and the auxiliary companies, they rule the roost. And he who pays the piper call the tune. And I'm saying that because there's several, every day you read, every day pick up the paper, several companies, several issues. And none of them, not one of them are indigenous Guyanese companies. They say they're 100% Guyanese owned. To be 100% Guyanese owned, you got to go to deeds registry, register the company, and you're a Guyanese owner. But none of these companies that are benefiting now are 100% indigenous Guyanese owned. And they've been given a free passage. And it will affect Berbice, your agriculture base, and everything like that. So I'd ask a man that knows everything about it to explain it to you, Vince.
Hey, thanks, David and Kemraj. Kemraj, I'm glad you just made me recognize that the government owes me some severance. You know? No.
I mean, let me make a claim on your behalf. I could write a lawyer's letter for that.
I'm not sure you would claim the discrimination part for Douglas people like myself.
Yeah, that is clear. That is clear. I could do that, but I know that you wouldn't want to, underscore that point.
Definitely.
But go ahead.
Anyway, it's nice. It's nice. It's nice again being on the forum here, speaking to my Barbies friends. Just to let you know, I spent the weekend with your son of the soil, Alvin Karicharan, in
Wow.
North Carolina
Oh
this
yeah.
last weekend here. So, we had some good old times for good old times' sake. Um, but anyway, obviously, Bobis is a very important part of the country. And what I don't think that a lot of people understand, Bobis is right smack in the middle of this whole oil thing. It's offshore, yes, but you're right smack in the middle of anything that may or might happen. Um, the major concern, which I know that David was touching on, the major concern that I know I'm really gravely concerned, and I know every single Guyanese should be concerned about, is that all the priority seems to be laid upon making money at the sacrifice of people's health, safety, and the environment. But it's not only that; it's your farms, it's your fishing industry that could be jeopardized. And I know and the whole EPA that is supposed to be that guardrail to make sure that the health, safety, and the environment is protected is now being taken over by politics. And I can tell you, and it's laughable, when I listen to, especially the vice president saying, well, they're doing more now in this new administration than the past administration. And I know that for a fact that's not true, because when I was at EPA, I can tell you that Exxon and the rest of those companies that came in here, they never had their way that what we're seeing now. Exxon is in full control, as far as I'm concerned, of the EPA, and really calling the shots. The politicians are calling in to the EPA, making decisions that we can see with the EIAs, etc. Now, getting back to oil, and how I want to talk about oil and how it's going to impact you. And like I said, it's a shame that we putting priority on money. And every decision that I'm seeing here that this current administration is making, it's targeted as making money rather than protecting the health, safety, and the environment. And like I said, protecting your livelihood, which some of it is farming and also fishing. Now, when you produce oil, you also produce not that just bare raw oil. You produce oil, you produce water, very contaminated water, salt water like you never seen. Well, it's even salter, several times even more, in some cases salter than the ocean water. And the water contains a ton of contaminants, including radioactivity. It comes from miles below the earth. It includes radioactivity. It includes lead, mercury, arsenic, just name it. It's very, very hot. Like, by the time it gets to the surface, you dump it, it's about 3 times the ocean water. So here you've got this foreign water that is very hot. You're dumping it. It also contains oil, by the way. Regardless how you treat it, you're still allowed to have a little bit of concentration of oil in that water. And then you get to the air. The air now contains over 250 contaminants. I mean, really toxic, nasty poisons. And we all know about the respiratory part of it. If you're asthmatic, etc., we know what the damages it can do. But what happens to whatever goes up has to come down, and it comes down in the form of rain. And not only any type of rain, it comes down in the form of acid rain. Even this carbon dioxide stuff that we say that there's emitted when you burn it, it goes up there. Carbon dioxide reacts with water to form carbonic acid. So it comes down as acid, and guess where it falls? It falls in the oceans where you're fishing. It falls in your farms. It falls in your streams. So this is long-term damage. So it's a very serious situation. Just for some specifics, and it's just misinformation and propaganda that they use these numbers out there to fool people, but they're bogus numbers. Now you hear the newest thing when the administration, when the coalition was in office, we stopped Exxon completely from flaring. They couldn't flare. Matter of fact, in one instance, we cut back they're flaring to the maximum extent possible, so that they just to the minimum that they can produce to operate. Right now, Exxon has been flaring for, well, since the new administration came on board, at the maximum capacity they've been producing at 120,000 barrels per day, which means that they've been flaring like crazy. And now I'm hearing that they're flaring 6 million cubic feet a day. Well, folks, all they have got to do, trust me, to cut back on that 6 million barrels per day, and I dare any technical person to dispute it, is to cut back on their oil production by a mere 6,000 barrels per day. But guess why they don't want to cut back on 6,000 barrels per day, which would take them to 114,000 barrels per day. Do you know what's the revenue that they would lose just by cutting back on the 6,000? Guess what it is? That would be almost $500 million per day. So that's the reason why they do not want to cut back on just a mere 6,000 barrels per day, which is less than 10%, by the way. So that's what's motivating them, I guess, and that's what motivating the government that is allowing them to go ahead and do that. So here they've got losing revenues for 6,000. I mean, for the 6,000 barrels per day, which is about $500 million. But then at the same time, you hear the government bragging, well, guess what? We're charging them a fine of $45 per ton of carbon dioxide emission. Guess what that fine amounts to for that 6 million cubic feet that they're flaring? Like $20,000 per day. So here they're saying, well, it's either I lose $500,000 or I pay $20,000. It's a cheap cost of doing business. So there's no incentive whatsoever for them to cut back on production. So that's what's going on. So when you hear all this nonsense about, well, we are now finally collecting fines, it's bogus. It's a mere sham. The other thing that the EPA through the government, when in the last coalition, when I was in office, we said that there shall be no flaring starting from especially in the Pariar, because the Pariar was a new permit. The agencies, not only the EPA, the GGMC, the Department of Energy, and even the lawyers who were hired, the Canadian lawyers hired by the same, we agreed and directed Exxon that there will be no flaring whatsoever. We're going to give you 2 days of flaring. Guess what? As soon as the EPA, the new government took office, instead of 2 days, which is, by the way, which is the U.S. standard, instead of giving them 2 days of flaring, they give them 60 days. They changed the permit to give them 60 days. So when you hear this whole thing, well, they're more stringent, it's a bunch of nonsense. No. I want to talk a little bit about, oh, by the way, in terms of the dumping of the water, we also said there shall be no dumping of water, because the water that is produced, they're dumping it into the ocean, all this contaminated hot water, they're dumping it in the ocean, but then they're using the ocean water to re-inject back into the well. When the international standard, even written by the World Bank and everything else, said that you have to re-inject every drop of water that you produce. I worked in the oil field as a drilling engineer and a reservoir engineer, and I've never heard of us dumping any water out in any ocean. They say you have to re-inject all the water back, but what they're doing, they're taking the water, they're dumping it in the ocean, and then using ocean water to re-inject it, because it's obviously cheaper for them. Here again, priority because of cost. They're putting the revenue ahead of absolutely. It's all about profit. So we asked them, well, what's the cost of the equipment? They keep complaining about all kinds of issues, which was not a bogus, because I checked it out myself based on my expertise. It was nonsense. I told them, show me the proof scientifically. They brought stuff that they just cut and paste from textbook, and I basically I told them that if like when I used to teach these classes, I would give them an F-. So I throw it away and never got anything else from them. And so we refused to accept it. And so we directed that there shall be no dumping of water in the ocean. As soon as the new government came into office, guess what? They allowed them to dump. And for the cost, when you ask them what the equipment is going to cost, they said $300 $300 million, which is nonsense. I don't think that's a price.
That's 300 million US dollars.
Yes, but that's nonsense. But anyway, let's assume it is. I guarantee that the Guyanese people's lives are worth much more than $300 million, with all the tens of billions of dollars and the hundreds of billions of dollars. So they're telling us we are not the same thing that they said with the flaring. Their justification for flaring in our environment, you know what they told us that their justification is? They can flare because Guyana is a carbon sink, meaning that our air is not contaminated, so we've got capacity to absorb more pollution. However, at the same time, they're making a commitment to the rest of the world to cut back on their emissions by almost 50%. But they're telling them we're going to cut back, but they want to continue to flare here. Now here is the biggest concern, and I hate to say, but something is going to happen sometime. It may not be a big spill. It might be in the form of a small one. We obviously hope if something happens, it's going to be a small spill. If we get an oil spill, the one thing that I know for sure is we need to have an emergency spill response plan. So folks, you folks who live in Berbice along the coast there, you need to start asking the government, where is that oil spill response plan? And everybody involved along the coast should be involved, should be doing drills, because if something happens, it's not somebody coming from Georgetown to help you out. It's you folks, the local community, who are going to have to be the first responders. So please ask them, where is that oil spill response plan if something happens? Because I'm telling you, it's going to wipe out that entire coast if something happens. So but we're not paying a whole lot of attention. And it's not only from Guyana. Here's the other part for you folks who live region 6 and 5. I don't know if you've been noticing that Suriname is now have now discovered a lot of oil and will be producing. And guess who's down current from Suriname? You guys are going to be hit first before it even gets to Georgetown. It would wipe away the entire coast because the current comes west, and all the Suriname's wells are west. We had started, and I even made a trip with a team from Guyana. We went to Suriname to start that discussion, and everything it didn't continue. And I'm not hearing if anything is even happening in terms of having that discussion. But you also should be involved in the development of any spill response plan, even that Suriname puts together, because it is going to impact you. So it's one of the most important things that I think that you need to consider or to put pressure on the government to be involved in. Look, I don't want to give the impression, and I know for sure my two colleagues here, all three of us are all in favor. I know for a fact we're all in favor of oil production. We are not, I know there are some people who say we should stop oil production. No way. I do not favor that. I know none of my two colleagues favor. But you should not make it the higher priority above health, safety, and the environment. You can do both and still make a lot of money. Protect the people's health, safety, and the environment and their livelihood, and still make a lot of money. And that's all we're asking for. We cannot have lawlessness here. And that's all that Exxon is interested in is the money, and we're backing them and supporting them and at the risk and sacrifice of the Guyanese health, safety, and the environment. We can't do that. We have to do both.
Yeah, let me also ask of this expert, and a lot of people don't know that he was almost the third in charge of the American Department of Energy, our own Dr. Vince Adams, under the Barack Obama's administration. And that is why he won the prestigious honor of heading as a top-notch executive of our EPA. Right now, I can't classify those others that are there as anything reaching the quality of a Vince. And by the way, he said he talked to Kalitra. He was with Alvin the other day. A lot of people in Berbice might not know, but Vince Adams was an extraordinary opening batsman when Kalicharan was
there and talk, Camera.
Yes.
Hey,
I got the score sheet.
Hey, they should know because they felt the wrath of the sword
Don't go there
when
at
I used
all.
100 against them in the county.
That's right. That is so true. And
But
I was a very young fella then.
so I love Mango Beach.
We need verifiable records of that cricket team.
No. I've gone back to the
Haven't
old
seen
graphic newspaper, and I've seen it there. And a lot of the like Bish Pandey and them told me about this man Vince Adams, and he made lots of runs against the powerful Barbados team that he played against.
I'm yet to be convinced. I'm yet to don't admit the trouble. I'm yet to be convinced of that part of the whole thing, that cricketing and Vince. But continue.
No.
Continue
But it is wonderful also to know this aspect of your expertise. Environmental impact assessments are also necessary to show what might be faults in certain designs and what might be done to take care of them from an even pre-project matter. What we've noticed in Guyana, like some concrete factory going up in a community that got lots of residents, and we noticing this EPA, which is now politically interfered with rather than the professional thing that you used to run under the coalition. They're avoiding all of these and are saying that there is no need for an environmental impact assessment. We noticed that with a bridge, the brand new bridge that got to go from one end to the other end of the two banks of the river. And what is happening here, Vince?
Well, that's another concern that bothers me.
Vince, hold on a second.
Huh?
No, I wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So you can Vince, while the public consultations were being for the gas to shore project, the Guyana, the fisher folks, they have an association, not the trawlers. I'm talking about the small fisher folks. They made several presentations, text on artisanal fishing, and they made several things. While nothing has been proven as yet, the artisanal fisher person, I'm sure, and this was in and the gas to shore project is over in Wales in Region 3. But I'm sure the same with the fisher folks over in Region 6. They have claimed that, even though it's not proven, that their fishing stock, the amount of fish that they catch, has been reduced since there has been oil drilling. So I'm not making any connection of those things. But what I'm asking, as you're answering, Kemraj, that EPA, if someone makes this claim, saying that, that we used to catch so much banger, so much prawns, seabob, and those things that every trip we're catching half. What would you, as EPA or somebody, what would you, if you're in charge of EPA, direct Exxon to do to disprove that their operation is affecting our fisher folks? And that is another question I think a lot of persons are asking. I know a lot of fisher persons in Region 6 are saying that they ain't catching, the catch is not the same. That's and it's rumored that it could be linked, but there's no proof. But we as a responsible government and you as a responsible person in charge of EPA have to investigate. So that I'd like you to also address that when you're speaking, Vince.
Absolutely. The one rule of managing the environment is that you never dismiss any assertions or what people say that they observe. You never dismiss it. You always err, on the conservative side. But that question there ties in, David. It also ties into this EIA. The EIA is the Bible of projects. Okay. The only time you really do not do an EIA is if you're absolutely certain that you understand the risk. Big projects like those, like a really good EIA, would have characterized, and not only characterized, it was a baseline, the entire ocean. One of the things that I was doing, what we're doing here right now, I even noticed, I read about the 12 wells that Exxon just got an exemption for not doing an EIA. one of the things that I told, that I brought all of the operators together, all of the different companies. I said, what we have to do is a single EIA of the entire ocean. Contaminants does not see boundaries. It doesn't see boundaries. So you do one EIA. So anything that comes up, now, let's say they come in with those 12 wells, that entire area would have already been covered by that EIA. But now you just can't really nearly go, well, there's 12 wells. I don't know if that 12 well fall within the vicinity of an EIA for Liza 1, Liza 2, or, I don't know the location. So, you just can't really need to do that. So that's the first thing we should have done, which is what I was working on. And I still believe it's the best thing to do.
Whose responsibility is it, Vince?
The EPA. It's the EPA can direct and say, hey, this is what I want, which is exactly what I was doing. We were working out some issues. They were saying, well, we don't want to disclose our proprietary stuff. There's no, they didn't convince me there was.
They come up with a pretext all the time.
So I didn't believe
big
so.
Companies. Yeah.
But that's where I was forcing all of this stuff, was for us to go to a single. But Dave, to answer your question, what the EIA also does, it establishes a baseline to say this is exactly what we have. And a new technology came on stream. It's called environmental DNA. It's eDNA. I had the only 2 exports in the country because you know what? Because we sent them to the second conference in the United States, because I was using my networking. We send them. And with the eDNA, you don't have to go. All you do, you collect samples of the ocean, and because of the residues of animals and everything else, you can tell how many fish, what type of animals, how are they migrating, just by the shedding of their skin, their feces, their urine, and everything. So, and you can measure that real time. You just put monitors all over the ocean. So that would, those are the kind of technology that we were implementing. Now I heard that all of my training program that I've implemented, they've stopped it. Not only have they stopped it, you know what they tell the staff? They tell the staff that it was illegal to send people on these training programs that I was sending them on. I was sending people to Houston. Send people to Houston so that they can see new chemicals that are going to be coming into the country. I had all those arrangements. Now, of course, what we did also, when they get leave off, they got to sign a contract to work for like 4 or 5 years. Now, even that, the best employees, I renew their contract and give some of them 5 years. They're now negating those contracts for the best employees, negating it and putting it to 1 year.
And 3, yes.
There's no incentive. So guess what is happening at the EPA? All the best employees who brought the EPA from where it was, which was a big sea change for the 2 years that I've been there, all of the good employees, they've been forced to leave, or those are buying them their time to leave. Now, going back to the EIA, and I have so much sympathy for the staff, because let's take the bridge, for example. If you recall, the EIA staff, the technical people, came out in November of last year and said, publish it. The bridge needs an EIA. Guess what? This year, it was overturned. And when you ask the technical, what the hell did you... Well, that I didn't know. We don't even know how this thing got changed. But that's what I'm telling you. And I can tell you, when I was there, and you two guys, there's no minister or no politician can raise their hands and say that they ever called me and influenced me to do anything. As a matter of fact, Dave and I used to get into it all the time, because he used to that project.
I know that. I know EIA was needed. You told me that.
He used to try to get out the EIA stuff. I said, no, you've got to do an EIA. So, but no, it's different. No, it's different. Now it's almost on a daily basis. They're getting instructions. It's political instruction. So, Dave, what I would do in a case like that, first of all, if you had an EIA, it would have at least give you an insight as to what's exactly, because you could go back to your modeling and even put what they're saying there. You would even input it into the model to see, is this possible or not, just based on a modeling scale. But the other thing that I would do, I would say, well, okay, go out there. You got to have a baseline first. And that's what an EIA gives. So somebody comes and say, hey, you know what? I'm losing some fish here. My baseline before the all starts would have said, this is what it was producing before. So now I could believe them, because this was what was happening. That's what an EIA does, Dave. So it still requires an investigation. like when you remember when the oil spill or whatever oil it was that washed up on the
Sure, yeah, right behind Marriott and
Pegasus there?
next day. I think it was the EPA. Somebody just went there and said it was what fat
animal fat.
animal
Animal fat.
and without any analysis or sampling. And then it was a few weeks afterwards. I think they said it was somebody dumped oil. So Dave, I think those type of things, especially now in a new environment, we need to be taken very seriously. Except we're starting out at the disadvantage that we do not have these baselines to say, okay, somebody says this, like they're saying that our fishing has dropped. What did the baseline tell us? I'm sure that information is
I have
not
a
there.
follow-up question. You mean because, and I'm asking these questions because
Sure.
I do, and they're all hypothetical, but I do see that we'll come to a stage, just like
And
the
it will
sugar
affect
factory,
Barbadians too. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
will affect Barbadian, and just like the issue we have with sugar, they will genuflex and they'll make a lot of things here, so and then they claim that there's nothing they could do. So I'm asking you a hypothetical question. That if this eDNA stuff, and you did a baseline as your experience, and you found that the fish stock has actually reduced, you did everything
Yes.
that you've recommended, right? Who's responsible? Is it the government or the operator, or how do we address it? Because I do see that, and we should have this conversation now. If it's proven true, how do you address it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if it's compensation, it's absolutely is the operator. If it's compensation, well,
Correct.
Kim Wright is the lawyer here, but
Yeah.
it's the operator. If and I'm sure I'm sure there's something there in the contract, because remember now that the operator is contracted to us. Now I know when I was in the U.S., it was a different situation in terms of, let's say, I was working with the Department of Energy. Every single permit had the Department of Energy signature, which is in a lot of cases my signature, and the contractor's signature. So what the EPA would normally go after is more one, but of course, because we are buddies and partners, they would more likely go after the contractor. But then they enjoin us because the government are the deep pockets. So I think it's a similar thing. Which by the way, brings me to something else that we changed. On the same EIA, when Lisa 2 came on my desk, when I looked at it, I was in total shock. Guess who signed that EIA? Not Exxon, the consultant that Exxon hired. And we've got a system where we have a list of approved consultants, which is something that I was going to be changing also, because it doesn't make any sense. Because when you're telling Exxon, you've got to choose from this list, then we are taking on the liability.
Yeah, you're taking the risk. Yeah, you're taking the risk.
So when the document came to me, I called Rod Henson. I said, Rod, wait a minute. You know that this here, where's your signature? He said, well, this is the way we've been doing it. I said, Rod, that's not going to pass muster with me. I packed it up back in the box, the same avenue, sent it to him. I said, I want your signature, not the consultant, because now you put what you were saying here. If anything happens, you're going to say, hey, that's not me. But that's what's written into we've opened ourselves big time for, and that was one of the things that was the top of my priority to change in our EPA Act. I hired, that was a high priority to change the EPA Act. And guess what? They've stopped the revision of the EPA Act because the EPA Act has nothing about all. The EPA Act is 25, was it? Yeah, 25 years old. And it's never changed. We never considered oil and gas. I even hired a special attorney to revise that. Here's what happened with my attorney. The best attorney, probably one of the best that I've ever had working for me. I had a bunch of really good ones in the U.S. Guess what? They got rid of that attorney because he was the one who was going after Exxon. He was the one prosecuting Exxon for refusing to pay a measly fine of $500.
In court.
That's right.
That is the Hamid guy. He's a right guy.
They dropped the case, and then the guy is gone. But that's what's happening at EPA, which is a major concern. And Exxon is having their way, and it's all about making money. I remember when the new administration took office, and Exxon, the gas system failed again, the compressor failed, and they went up to maximum capacity 100, and they even went above the safe level that defined in the EIA. The quote in the EIA said the safe operating limit is 120,000 barrels per day. Guess what they were operating at when the compressor failed? 130,000 barrels per day.
Yes, I remember
because
that.
of greed. That's illegal. In the US, their operation would have been shut down completely. Okay, so but that's
One
what
other issue.
that's what bothers me.
Cameron, my apologies. I know me now, but
No, go ahead. No, it's all right.
So Vince, I can see the PPP getting on the TV tomorrow.
Yeah.
And trying to rebut what you're saying, and I know for sure because they've already done that and they've already started saying that EIAs and all these studies of those things are slowing down progress, and that if we're only calling for these things because we want to slow down development and those things like that, which is totally untrue. But I would like you to quickly, because I know that we're 52 minutes in.
Yeah.
Quickly, because we went through this before, telling people that EIA doesn't slow down progress, it actually enhances your progress. So in a minute or two, and then I'll let Kemraj go.
Yeah. Well, we get back again. Everything has costs. Every project has costs and schedule. Are we sacrificing schedule? The one thing we learn again, even in the United States, that you know, is probably the most capitalist country in the world, which means everything is about money. In the United States, they've got as much rigor in the environment control as making money. The two always comes together. But Dave, EIA all over the world takes time. You know, you whether it's a year or 2 years, that's what it takes, even in the US and in England and every place else. You go ask, we had a committee that the IOPA, which is the regulators, all the big countries who produce oil. I got the Guyana to become the 9th member of IOPA. And we were sitting, and that was one of the things we came up with. Okay, did we ask each other, how much does an EIA, you know, how long does it take? And people come up with 2 years, sometimes even more than 2 years. It's normal. So it's the planning on the you know, that the developer has to take. For example, you remember the thing with the mangroves?
Yes.
The developer came, met with me, my good friend. They met with me, and I told them up front. They said that they wanted to build a shore base.
Shore base.
I said, well, bro, in order to build it, you're gonna have to remove a hell of a lot of mangroves. And anytime we touch mangroves, I ain't got is EIA. I don't care what, you know, is EIA. He said, how long is it going to take? I said, well, let me tell you, I'm going to be honest. It could take a year. It could take 2 years because that's the normal thing. Immediately said, well, forget about the mangroves. Forget about the shore base. We're just going to build, it in 2 phases. First phase is going to be just a storage thing inland. So we said, okay, so that's what the application was about. So I was shocked when I heard that the mangroves was cleared after I had left, and then you go. When they clear the mangroves, so now you can't pull them back because you can't go. So now I'm sure
they're
that
gone.
They're moving forward by even violating the laws. You know, they're moving forward. So an EIA is critical, Dave, and you know, we normally, when a project comes in, we normally go through a flow diagram. You know, if someone's but to see whether we should do an EIA, whether we should just do a memo to file, or whether we should do what we call just an EA, which is an environmental assessment, which is equivalent to our EMP here. But anytime you have doubts, you always err on, you know, the conservative side, because you don't want to leave anything undone, because you might assume something, and the next thing you know, it comes back to bite you in you know where. And that bridge, there is no question that bridge is supposed to be an EIA, and that's what the EPA officer said.
That's right. No, well, you know, coming to the end of the program now, I want to say that this is what this government understands about democracy. They must degut all the statutory regimes that we have put in place to strengthen democracy. They are degutting the EPA. They're degutting the regime on what you call termination and severance payment, just so as to keep calm their supporter base. They're degutting safety issues in so many places, health and occupational safety issues for sugar workers, who are but the brunt of their supporters, quite frankly. And I have to say also, bad news for Barbicians, although I don't like to say that. But only today, I think I heard, as we have been indicating, as a result of the bad handling from Region 6 of that major flood, over 33% of our acreage will not be producing paddy for the next crop. So instead of, I think, 60,000 acres, we're going to get 40,000 acres. That is a hell of a problem for rice farmers, too, in Berbice. It is crazy in Region 6. And then we also have now we in the Alliance for Change have been talking about it, being vindicated when we now hear from Bharat Jagdeo when he went up there and saying that they want verification of the fraud relief given because a lot of scamps collected, PPP people collected the thing, money, big money, when they were not supposed to collect. And also those who were honest and made claims and deserved monies to go into the next crop, whatever the crop, if it's rice or cash crop, they did not get. Thousands of people were affected by the corrupt personnel the PPP put. And we were talking about that at the time. And that is why, as you say, you need environmental impact assessment. You need a pre-plan and a system as to how you're going to ensure verification of how you're going to spend these billions and billions of dollars. But it is atrocious what the same president, former President Jagdeo, is getting on in. But he comes there now and he say, boss, I got to look into this thing now. And I want a brand new investigation to be conducted, and so on and so on. And then he prays God. That is what he does. And the Barbicians say, thank God that Jagdeo come here by. But we were telling Jagdeo all along, and Minister of Finance, who providing the monies, and all the other PPP parliamentarians set up a system that could be scrutinized from the very inception so that you're not going to get wrongdoing. Now, to correct the wrongdoing would be a lot of administrative costs. It's going to be money back in the treasury they're hunting for. And this is but how it is all wrong. I am very happy to have had Vince this evening, for Barbicians to know what we are missing. Here is a member of the diaspora, brilliant person, doctor in oil engineering, and I don't know how much other things he can write about and so on. Third highest official in the Obama administration in energy and all kind of thing. And you know, Jagdeo had promised that I'm gonna ensure that you stay. Jagdeo knocked the man off. Yes, send him back. Go back. That is it. Call off the innings. And I'm certain you would have scored well, especially against Exxon. Because when you're dealing with Exxon Barbicians, you need somebody who got experience with these big companies. But there's a lot of ignorance now.
And who they know, who they respect and know that they better toe the line or else.
Yes, and that is what he dealt with Exxon over in America under the Barack Obama administration. But Jagdeo probably was told.
I think we have to wrap up now. Huh?
Yeah, no, I know. We got to wrap up. But it is so important.
So just a quick couple of words from me. I mean, it's a pleasure being on here with you and Vince. Vince, I know, very, very well qualified, continues to be so. I still have a little query on the cricket and the sporting issue, but that's a different issue altogether. I'm saying it publicly, so therefore I like to think.
You really believe I want to challenge your position as the best athlete in Guyana. That's what you see.
Barbies, if Barbies, you could Google Vince Adam, you see great things. The doctorates, he has about 2 doctorates and masters. You will see nothing about cricket. But
No.
I missed the opportunity to talk about GPL. Every single
There's something on
day
GPL.
in
Come on,
Barbados.
David. We can get an extension.
No, time is going, but every single day in Barbados you get blackout. And I know while we were there, I mean we did tremendous. The new sets in Cane Field, we put it there, the new transformers and everything. These guys got the whole system on a platter, and I don't know what to say with them, you know. I mean, and Barbadians on Facebook, they contact me, what's going on. I think that you are not, or you are being ill served. They have not a clue. They brought back a fellow that they wanted to fire. They fired, and I can tell you that they fired Bar Dindial. This is the PPP fired him. He was on a month-to-month contract. When we came in, we had terminated him. And one of the reasons that they fired him is because he could not maintain the system. Every generator you put in, within 2 weeks under his administration, they were broken up. Same thing is happening now, but they will tell you all sorts of things. I know for sure one thing they have not said, Kemraj and Vince, is that we brought the system down because we handed them over function and we took it from 0. We carried it to 1 or 2, whatever it is. They haven't had the what did I say? I passed the turn and said that we give them, we brought them the system. We brought it back and they're carrying it back down. Have not a clue. They're only going on this gas ashore project, which I've said publicly and I say it again and I hope it's recorded, but the gas ashore project is one of the biggest Ponzi scheme ever. Since Bernie Madoff did that, biggest Ponzi scheme. It's a retirement fund for those guys in the PPP because they're not sure they're going to win the election or anything like that, but they're going to cream up. It's almost $1.2 billion US. They're going to cream off enough, and then they're going to say, they had enough of this politics and I'm going to retire. Vince, you could have the last word.
Yeah, quickly, because this year is really critical. It's something that was a very high priority for me, and apparently has been thrown away now. If something happens, and if we get a spill, folks, you remember what happens with the Macondo spill in the Gulf? It ended up costing BP, and even ran BP almost bankrupt, about $70 billion US. Okay, when I arrived and with the new administration, the coalition administration, Exxon was in the contract. They were covering it by self-insurance, and we recognize that there's weak. There's a weakness here. We fixed that by telling Exxon, you've got to go and get the highest insurance out in the market. So they went and do that. The highest insurance they can get was $2.5 billion. We said, hey, Macondo cost $70 billion. The government of Guyana would go more than bankrupt because there's no way we can cover that money. Your corporate, your parent companies have to cover the rest, or else I ain't signing off on none of your permits. Of course, they push back all kinds of threat from them, bringing in the president. I said, hey, I don't care. It's sitting on my desk. It's sat there for months until they banned the 3 parent companies. We were working with them to come up with that agreement as to how they were going to cover it. Of course, it was for the Liza 2 and the Payaro, which hadn't started yet. Mm-hmm. So we gave them the permit so that they can go out and get their investors. However, there's a condition in that permit to say you cannot start until you come up with this agreement. Well, we were working on finalizing it, and when the new administration comes now, we've gotten rid of the lawyer who was working it, as a matter of fact. And now, so I don't know where that is, but it's a critical component of how, what can happen on the coast and in Berbice. As far as if you get a spill, there's no coverage right now except for $2.5 billion, which is a drop in the bucket to cover something like that. And I think that's very, very important. The other thing is transparency. Just quickly on transparency. Imagine the one thing that I told my staff, that you will level with the public. If somebody calls, by the way, we had a 24-hour hotline that we introduced, so anybody can call in and not only did we have a 24-hour hotline, we had to respond to them the next morning if they call in, and like we had to respond within 24 hours to say we received it and this is the action we're taking. So total transparency. And I said, if there's something that you go there, we do not have the equipment to go measure it, say that you don't. You can't just go with some old equipment, you know it's measuring wrong, and you're giving them wrong information. You're playing with their life and livelihood. That's the way we operated while we were trying to purchase new equipment. Guess what happens with the new administration? They're saying that that's insane to be telling people that you don't have equipment. What kind of nonsense? That's what they're telling. That's what they're telling the staff. So you can see why the morale of the staff is just deteriorating, and the staff is devastated because they were empowered. They were allowed to go there and do their thing. I never second. I would. If we had an issue, we could go there and I would change it. But I always back them up. I prefer for them to go there and make a mistake. But they were always empowered. That's not happening anymore. They've gone back to the old days where they make a decision and a politician comes in and overturn it. So that's what we've got in EPA now. We basically have a non-functional agency as far as I'm concerned, because the technical officers are not allowed to do their jobs.
That is so true. And this is a nice point to bring it to an end. The PPP government has proven that they are rather environmentally hazardous to Barbicians and the country, the entire Guyanese community. Thanks very much, Vince, especially Vince, and of course, David Patterson too, for being on this Berbice Alliance on the Move show, especially for the Barbicians. Yours have been a totally educational program this evening. And I hope that Barbicians will be paying attention to the points made and also to continue their demonstrations in wanting to know more by asking the relevant questions, also asking us to have more experts in these programs. Thanks again, and a very good night, Barbicians.
Good night, guys.